The rain hit the windshield so hard it felt like the night itself was trying to erase everything that had happened just minutes ago. Neon lights flickered across the soaked streets of downtown Chicago, blurring into streaks of red and gold as the black SUV came to a sudden halt. Inside, a man in an expensive suit sat frozen, his breath uneven, his hands gripping the steering wheel like he was holding on to the last piece of control he had left. Across the street, under the dim glow of a flickering street lamp, a woman stood completely still, her soaked coat clinging to her frame. Her eyes locked onto him with a calm intensity that felt more powerful than anger. There was no hesitation in her posture, no fear in her expression. Just a quiet certainty, like she had already won. Before this story begins, take a second to like and subscribe. Because sometimes the people the world throws away don't just survive. They come back strong enough to change everything. 7 years earlier, the rain hadn't been nearly as dramatic, but it had felt just as heavy. Back then, her name didn't carry weight. It didn't open doors or silence rooms. Back then, Emily Carter was just an 18-year-old girl, standing on the front porch of a house that had never really felt like home. The air smelled like wet asphalt and freshly cut grass, and somewhere in the distance, a dog barked like it didn't understand why everything suddenly felt so tense. Her father, Daniel Carter, stood in the doorway behind her, his voice sharp, final, and completely empty of anything that resembled love. Daniel Carter. You made your choice, Emily. Now you live with it. I'm done fixing your mistakes. Emily's fingers tightened around the strap of her worn backpack. Inside it were a few clothes, a notebook, and the last photograph she had of her mother, a woman who had passed away years ago, but had always been the only person who made Emily feel like she belonged somewhere. Emily Carter. I didn't make a mistake. I just didn't want the life you chose for me. Daniel's jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing like he couldn't recognize the girl standing in front of him anymore. Daniel Carter. That life would have given you security, a future. Instead, you threw it away for what? Pride? Emily swallowed hard, the lump in her throat threatening to break her voice. But she didn't let it. Emily Carter. No, I threw it away because I want something that's mine, not something you control. There was a long pause, the kind that feels like it's stretching time just to make the moment hurt more. Then Daniel stepped back and slowly closed the door in her face. The sound of that door shutting echoed louder than anything else in her life up to that point. And just like that, Emily Carter had nowhere to go. The first night was the hardest. She walked for hours, her shoes soaked, her body exhausted, her mind spinning with 1,000 questions she didn't have answers to. The city felt colder than it ever had before, like it knew she didn't belong to it yet. Every passing car felt like a reminder that everyone else had somewhere to be, somewhere to return to. She ended up sitting on a bench near a quiet bus stop, hugging her backpack close like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Her stomach growled, but hunger was the least of what she felt. The real pain came from the silence, from the realization that no one was coming to help her. That night, she didn't cry. Not because she wasn't broken, but because something inside her had already started to harden. The days that followed blurred together in a rhythm of survival. Cheap motels when she had money, cold sidewalks when she didn't, part-time jobs that barely paid enough to eat, long hours, aching feet, sleepless nights. She learned quickly that the world didn't care about her story, only what she could offer. But Emily had something most people didn't notice at first. She watched. She listened. She learned. Every diner she worked at, every office she cleaned late at night, every conversation she overheard. She absorbed it all like it was building something inside her piece by piece. She noticed how business owners talked, how deals were made, how people with power carried themselves differently and slowly. She started to change. By the time she was 21, Emily wasn't just surviving anymore. She had saved enough to rent a tiny apartment above a laundromat. It wasn't much. Peeling paint, a leaky faucet, and a window that barely shut. But it was hers. And that meant everything. That was also the night she met her. It was late, almost midnight. The streets were quieter than usual, the kind of silence that made every footstep echo a little louder. Emily had just finished a double shift at a small downtown diner, her body exhausted, her mind already thinking about the next day. That's when she saw the car. It didn't belong there. A sleek black sedan parked awkwardly near the curb. One tire slightly off angle like something wasn't right. The headlights were off, but the engine was still running, and for some reason, Emily couldn't just walk past it. Something felt off. She slowed down, her instincts pulling her closer before her mind could stop her. And then she saw her. A woman sitting in the driver's seat, her head resting against the window, her face pale under the faint glow of the streetlight. She looked wrong, not drunk, not asleep, something else. Emily hesitated. This wasn't her problem. She had her own life to worry about. Her own struggles? But then, something inside her shifted. Maybe it was the memory of nights when no one stopped for her. Maybe it was the quiet understanding of what it felt like to be alone. Whatever it was, it made her step forward. She knocked gently on the window. No response. A little harder this time. Still nothing. Her heart started to race. Emily Carter. Hey, can you hear me? Nothing. Without thinking twice, she tried the door handle. It opened. The woman's body slumped slightly as the door cracked open, and Emily caught her just before she fell out. Her skin was cold, too cold. Panic hit instantly. Emily Carter. Hey, stay with me, okay? I've got you. The woman's eyes fluttered open just barely, unfocused, struggling. Mysterious woman. Don't. Call anyone? Emily froze for a second. Who says that in a moment like this? Emily Carter. You need help. I'm calling an ambulance. The woman's grip tightened weakly around Emily's wrist. Mysterious woman. No hospitals. Please, you don't understand. There was fear in her voice. Not normal fear, the kind that comes from knowing something much bigger is at stake. Emily's mind raced. This didn't make sense. Nothing about this situation made sense. But as she looked into the woman's eyes, she saw something familiar. Desperation. Trust. A silent plea that felt too real to ignore. And that's when Emily made a decision that would change everything. Emily Carter. Okay, no hospital. But you're not staying here either. I'm taking you somewhere safe. She didn't know why she said it. She didn't know what she was getting herself into. But she knew one thing. She couldn't walk away. Getting the woman out of the car wasn't easy. She was weak, barely conscious, her weight leaning heavily against Emily. As they slowly made their way down the quiet street, every step felt like a risk. Every shadow felt like it was watching them. By the time they reached Emily's apartment, her arms were shaking, her heart pounding, like it was trying to warn her that something bigger than she understood was unfolding. Inside, the small room felt even smaller with another person in it. Emily laid the woman gently on her bed, grabbing a towel, water, anything she could think of. The woman's breathing was uneven. Her condition, unstable. Emily Carter. Stay with me, please. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time stopped making sense. And then, just before dawn, the woman finally spoke again. Mysterious woman. Why? Would you help me? Emily paused, sitting beside her, her voice quieter now. Emily Carter. Because once, I needed someone to stop for me too. The woman's eyes softened slightly. And for the first time, she smiled. But there was something about that smile. Something hidden. Something powerful. Something that made it clear. This wasn't just a random moment. This was the beginning of something much bigger. Over the next few days, the woman slowly recovered. She never gave her full name, only said her name was Olivia. No last name, no details, just Olivia. But everything about her felt different. The way she spoke, the way she observed, the way she asked questions. Like she was measuring Emily, trying to understand something deeper than just her story. And Emily, she couldn't explain it. But she trusted her, more than she probably should have. Days turned into weeks. Olivia stayed. And in that time, something changed. Not just in Emily's life, but in her future. Because one night, as the city lights flickered through the cracked window, Olivia finally said something that made everything stop. Olivia. Emily. What if I told you? Your life doesn't have to stay like this? Emily looked at her confused. Emily Carter. What do you mean? Olivia's eyes held a quiet intensity now, not weak, not fragile, but powerful. Olivia. I mean, what if everything you've been fighting for is just the beginning? There was a pause. A long one. The kind that feels like standing at the edge of something unknown. Emily didn't realize it yet. But that moment, that question, was the exact second her life began to change forever. Because the woman she had saved was hiding something. Something that would either build Emily into something unstoppable or destroy everything she had worked so hard to become. And by the time the truth came out, there would be no turning back. The silence that followed. Olivia's question didn't feel empty. It felt heavy, like the air itself was waiting for something to be said that would change everything. Outside, the city of Chicago moved like it always did. Cars passing, distant sirens echoing through the night. People living lives Emily had once only watched from the outside. But inside that small apartment above the laundromat, time felt like it had stopped just for them. Emily sat on the edge of her chair, her fingers loosely wrapped around a chipped mug that had long since gone cold. Her eyes stayed on Olivia, searching her face for answers, for clarity, for something real in the middle of all the unknowns that had been building since the night she found her. Emily Carter, you keep saying things like that, like you already know something about my future. But you don't even know me, Olivia. Not really. Olivia didn't respond immediately. She leaned back slightly, her posture no longer weak or fragile like it had been days ago. There was strength in her now, control, and something else. Something that had been hidden beneath the surface all along. Well, I know more than you think, Emily, not because I've been watching you, but because I recognize you, the way you think, the way you move, the way you refuse to break, even when everything around you gives you every reason to. Emily's brow furrowed slightly, confusion mixing with a strange sense of unease. Emily Carter. That doesn't explain anything. Olivia exhaled slowly, her gaze shifting toward the window for just a second before returning to Emily. Olivia, you're right. It doesn't. And maybe it's time I stopped speaking in pieces. There was a subtle shift in the room, not in the environment, but in the feeling. Like a quiet truth was about to step into the light, whether Emily was ready for it or not. Olivia leaned forward slightly, her voice lowering just enough to make every word feel more deliberate. Olivia, my full name is Olivia Hayes. The name didn't mean anything to Emily at first. It just hung there in the air, until something clicked, something faint, something buried, deep in the fragments of conversations she had, overheard in diners and offices over the years. And then her eyes widened slightly. Emily Carter. Wait, Hayes. As in Hayes Corporation? Olivia didn't smile. She didn't nod proudly. She simply held Emily's gaze and let the silence confirm it. The realization hit slowly at first, then all at once. Hayes Corporation wasn't just another business. It was everywhere. Real estate, technology, investments, entire neighborhoods shaped by its decisions. The kind of company people talked about in lowered voices, like it existed on a level most couldn't even reach. And Olivia, the woman Emily had dragged out of a car and into her tiny apartment, was connected to all of it. Emily stood up abruptly, her chair scraping lightly against the floor. Emily Carter, no, that doesn't make sense. If you were part of something like that, you wouldn't be passed out in your car telling a stranger not to call an ambulance. Olivia's expression didn't change. But there was something deeper in her eyes now, something that carried weight. Olivia, I wasn't supposed to be found that night. The words were quiet, but they landed hard. Emily's heartbeat picked up again, that same uneasy feeling from the night she found Olivia creeping back in. Emily Carter, what does that mean? Olivia hesitated for the first time since she started speaking openly, not out of fear, but out of careful consideration. Olivia, it means the life you think I come from isn't as stable as it looks from the outside. Power attracts loyalty, but it also attracts enemies. And sometimes those enemies don't fight fair. Emily's mind raced, trying to piece everything together. Emily Carter, are you saying someone tried to hurt you? Olivia didn't answer directly. Olivia, I'm saying that the night you found me, I had just walked away from something that could have ended very differently. If you hadn't stopped. The room fell silent again. But this silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of meaning, full of consequences. Emily slowly sat back down, her thoughts shifting from confusion to something else, something sharper. Emily Carter, so why tell me all this now? Olivia leaned forward slightly, her voice steady. Olivia, because you saved my life, and I don't ignore things like that. I repay them. Emily shook her head almost immediately. Emily Carter, I didn't help you for anything in return. Olivia, I know. That's exactly why you're different. That sentence hung in the air longer than anything else that had been said. Different. It was a word Emily had heard her whole life, but never like this, not as something valuable, not as something powerful. Olivia continued, her tone shifting slightly, becoming more focused. Olivia, you've spent years surviving. Emily, learning how people think, how systems work, how to move without anyone noticing. You did all of that without resources, without support, without guidance. She paused, letting that sink in. Olivia, do you have any idea what you could do if you had all of that? Emily didn't respond right away, because for the first time in a long time, she didn't have an immediate answer. Her entire life had been built on reacting, adapting, surviving, not imagining something bigger, not believing in something more. Emily Carter, people like me don't just walk into worlds like yours. Olivia's gaze didn't waver. Olivia, no, they don't. Another pause. Olivia, but sometimes they build their own. Something shifted in Emily at that moment. Not completely, not instantly, but enough. Enough to make her listen differently, enough to make her consider something she had never allowed herself to consider before. The next few months didn't happen overnight. There was no sudden transformation, no instant success, but there was change. Slow, intentional, real. Olivia didn't just offer Emily money or comfort. She offered her access, knowledge, perspective. She introduced her to spaces Emily had only ever observed from the outside. Rooms where decisions were made, where deals were negotiated, where influence was currency. At first, Emily felt out of place. The clothes, the conversations, the expectations. It all felt like a world she wasn't built for. But Olivia didn't let her retreat. Olivia, you don't need to become them. You just need to understand them. And Emily did. She watched, just like she always had. But this time, she wasn't invisible. She asked questions. She made connections. She noticed patterns others ignored. And slowly, people started noticing her. Not because she was loud, not because she demanded attention, but because when she spoke, it meant something. Years passed, not wasted, not survived. Built. Emily Carter was no longer the girl who had been left on a porch with a backpack and nowhere to go. She had become something else entirely. Something sharper, stronger, unshakable. She started small at first. Investments in overlooked properties, neighborhoods people ignored, opportunities others didn't think twice about, the same way she had once been overlooked. And just like her, they grew. One building turned into three. Three turned into blocks. Blocks turned into influence. And influence turned into power. But she never forgot where she came from. Not the nights on cold sidewalks. Not the silence. Not the feeling of being invisible. And definitely not the door that had closed behind her 7 years later. The rain returned. But this time, it didn't feel the same. Because Emily wasn't the same. She stood under that streetlight, her coat dark against the storm, her posture calm, her presence commanding in a way that didn't need to be announced. Across the street, Daniel Carter sat in his SUV, staring at her like he was looking at someone he couldn't recognize anymore. Because the truth was, he couldn't. Emily slowly stepped forward, crossing the street with quiet confidence. The sound of her heels against the wet pavement echoed in the silence between them. She stopped just short of his car. He stepped out. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The years between them felt heavy, filled with everything that had never been said. Daniel finally broke the silence, his voice uncertain in a way Emily had never heard before. Daniel Carter. Emily, I didn't know it was you at first. Emily's expression didn't change. Emily Carter. That makes sense. You didn't really see me back then either. The words weren't loud, but they carried weight. Daniel looked down briefly, guilt flickering across his face. Daniel Carter. I heard things about someone buying up half the city. I just didn't think... He couldn't finish the sentence. Emily didn't help him. She just let him sit in it. Because for once, he didn't have control of the conversation. Daniel Carter, I made mistakes. Emily let out a quiet breath, the rain continuing to fall around them. Emily Carter, you didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. That hit harder. because it was true. Daniel looked back up at her, his voice softer now. Daniel Carter. I thought I was protecting you. I thought I knew what was best. Emily's eyes softened, just slightly, not with forgiveness, but with understanding. Emily Carter, maybe you believed that, but you never asked me what I wanted. Silence again. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was clear, clean, final. Daniel took a step closer, his voice almost hopeful. Daniel Carter, is there any way to fix this? Emily looked at him for a long moment. 7 years of pain, growth, strength, all of it reflected in her eyes. Emily Carter, you can't fix the past. Another pause. Emily Carter, but you can decide what you do with the time you have left. Daniel nodded slowly, like he understood more in that moment than he had in years. Emily stepped back slightly, the distance between them returning. Not as rejection, but as truth. Because some things aren't meant to go back to what they were. As she turned to walk away, Daniel's voice called out one last time. Daniel Carter, Emily. She stopped, but didn't turn around. Daniel Carter, I'm proud of you. For a brief second, the world felt still again. And this time, Emily allowed herself to feel it. Not the pain, not the past, but the quiet recognition of how far she had come. Emily Carter, I didn't do this to make you proud. A small pause. Emily Carter, I did it because I refused to stay broken. And with that, she walked away. The rain continued to fall, but it no longer felt like something trying to erase her story. It felt like something washing away everything that had once tried to hold her back. Because the truth is, the world will always have doors that close on you, people who underestimate you, moments that try to define you by your lowest point. But sometimes, all it takes is one decision, one moment of kindness, one refusal to give up, to change everything. And the girl who was once left with nothing didn't just survive. She became someone the world could no longer ignore.